There's been some concern from some people that because we have supplied the pulley with a 1/8 slot, which allows our customers to use the machine for all types of slot cars up to a 1/8 axle, that when you use the pulley on a smaller axle for a Scalextric car, which is about 3/32, that the eccentric motion that results from using the pulley on a smaller axle is somehow affecting the accuracy of the tyres when being trued. Now I wanted to make this video just to demonstrate what's actually happening using a dial gauge. Now just to explain, this dial gauge has graduations of 0.01 of a millimetre, which is less than a thou for those of you who speak in metric. About 3 graduations on the dial, we'd be starting to talk about a thou, and to put it into perspective, about 9 graduations on the dial would be at the thickness of a piece of paper, and about 8 graduations on the dial would be about the thickness of a human hair. So if we see motion of up to 8 graduations on the dial, we'll be saying that the tyres are out of round by the thickness of a human hair. So let's just see what happens. I'm going to raise the axle up into the dial gauge. You'll see that needle has just made contact, and I'll bring it round to the 0 just to sort of give us a reference point. Now I'm going to turn the power supply on at about 6 volts, which is where we would start truing. And there we go. Just to give you an idea of how sensitive this dial gauge is, if I tap the table, you can see that that needle is moving just from the vibration going up through the rubber feet through the table. But if I don't tap and I stop speaking, you can see that that needle is almost perfectly still. Now this is an ideal setup. We're talking about a drill bank axle and machined aluminium wheels. So what happens in in the application of using a Scalextric or an Inco axle, which is what a lot of you are purchasing the machine to use it for? So that's an ideal setup, but it's showing that the pulley is not affecting the motion of the wheels. If the axle is straight and the wheels are true, then they will spin in a perfectly concentric motion. Turning the power supply off, I'm just going to show you what does happen if I put an Inco axle. Now this is just an Inco axle that's been trued on the machine, just using the normal process. Okay, so once again I'll set up the dial gauge, raise the axle so that we're centered on our reference point. I'll put a drop of oil just so that it's not gripping on the rubber, and turn the power supply back on. Now there's a little bit more motion there, but these bushes, as opposed to the oil lights that I was using on the other axle, you can actually feel the movement in there. There would be more than the human hair's free play between the axle and the bush, but when it's on the machine, it's spinning almost perfectly true. Now, people might say, what happens if you turn the speed up? Well, if I turn the speed up, the tyre starts to grow slightly, but we're still talking less than maybe 0.01 of a millimetre just in that motion. But I suspect that a lot of that motion could actually be coming from the machine itself actually vibrating on the table. If I had the right equipment, I'd like to see, if I set the dial gauge up sitting on the base plate, if any of that motion would go away. But we're talking 1/10 of a human hair movement there, which I think you'd have to agree that for this hobby called slot car racing is pretty good. Now just one more demonstration, just using the Scalextric F1 axle that I trued on the earlier video. This axle has plastic, or nylon bushes I should say, not necessarily known for their high tolerance or accuracy, but let's just see how well or how round we've got these wheels using the machine. So I'm just going to centre that again on our reference point. Once again, just a drop of oil to stop it gripping on the rubber, and we'll fire it up. A little bit more motion there, but once again, less than 0.02, less than a thou out of round. Maybe a bit more work on the sandpaper, we could get rid of that, but in reality, once you click that back into the car, you're going to get more movement in your bushes than that tyre is out of round. So hopefully that demonstration just shows that the eccentric motion of the pulley is not having any effect on the motion of the tyres, which allows you to true those tyres to as close to perfect as I think is reasonable for this type of application. 1 or 2 tenths of a human hair. How accurate do we need to be? But that's up for you. That's for you to decide. So, thanks for watching, and I hope that's answered some of your questions.